Hello, everyone. My name is Nathan Kellum-Pathe. I'm the Product Communications Specialist at Leica Camera USA. Thank you so much for joining us for another Leica Conversations. A little bit of housekeeping before we get started. You will see that there is a chat function that you're welcome to use. We'd love to hear where you're tuning in from. This is also a great space for you to ask questions during the live show. Without further ado, I'd like to introduce you to our guest, Mark Asuncion. Mark, thank you so much for joining us. How you doing?
I'm doing well. Thank you for having me. I appreciate you lending your platform for me to be able to discuss photography.
It's our pleasure. Well, before we get started in looking some of your beautiful imagery, I would love for you to introduce yourself and maybe answer the first question, which is how did you get started with photography?
Yeah, for sure. So, hello everyone. My name is Mark Asuncion. I am a North American-based photographer and art director, specifically in Fort Lee, New Jersey, if anyone lives in the New York area. I got started in photography a while back ago, maybe like 15 years ago. I picked up a point and shoot from my mom. We were at a museum and I was just playing around with the macro mode. I took a bunch of pictures of flowers, and yeah, ever since then I've been dabbling. But professionally, I want to say maybe like 8 to 10 years ago I started shooting.
Perfect. Well, let's look at some of your imagery. And let's start off with these shots right here. These were all shot with the Leica M240. And I would love for you to kind of share a little bit about your Leica journey. We're going to see a number of images shot with different cameras, starting here with the Leica M240 all the way to the M11-P. How did you get started with this particular camera?
So I got started with that particular camera actually very recently. I found a listing on Facebook Marketplace. It ended up being a neighbor of mine. And then we geeked out about cameras, and he was able to give it to me for a really good price. So I I fell in love with that. I needed a digital rangefinder at the moment. Um, Prior to that, I was shooting on the M3, and I just needed to fill a little digital void for myself.
Yeah, I totally understand that. And I think that the M240 is a fantastic way to get started. It offered for the first time in the M series live view and also video. And we have a couple images here on display here. Do you mind sharing a little bit about your thoughts about how these images were created?
Yeah, of course. I actually created those images very recently too. That was about a week or two ago in New York. Composition wise, I guess just shooting with the MP240 in general, or just any M camera, like it allows me to frame things up like very unconventionally, just because I'm looking through the rangefinder. There's no screen, there's no like digital feedback for me, and like you were saying, the MP240 is a little bit of an older camera, so I'm not even really using the screen at all for feedback when I'm shooting. I'm kind of just shooting as I go, and then once I get home, I'll review those images. And that's kind of the allure of like why I got into the MP240. I've shot the M10 before, I've shot the M11P, all very fun cameras, but I wanted something that was a little bit closer to my M3 experience, which I love, but just to save a little bit of cost and on film.
Absolutely. Yeah, yeah. And is this commercial work or is this personal work that we're seeing right now?
This is personal work. So it's interesting. I feel like as a photographer, I live in such a unique space where the personal work and the professional work, there's like a very blurred line of like what I can create, because a lot of my clients, they like to give me a lot of freedom in what I do and what I create. So the personal work almost guides my professional work and vice versa, which is very, very cool. But yes, this is personal work. I was just out on a photo walk, grabbing some drinks with some friends, and ended up with these shots.
I love that. I think that's, a lot of times, a lot of people try to create that separation between the personal work and, the commercial work, but you're a photographer. You're always looking for these kinds of shots. You're always looking for creativity. So I'm glad that it bleeds in. I think for me, it's a good way to kind of keep the finger on the trigger, on the pulse, so that when you do have a commercial work, you're ready to go. You're all inspired.
Yeah, exactly. And for the longest time in the beginning of my career too, I was so um focused on trying to separate those lines and just making
Mm.
something for personal, something for professional. But as I got older and progressed throughout my career, I was just like, you know what, it would be a lot easier for my creative vision, and for me to be able to portray that if I like just blurred these lines and kind of mix them.
And then it makes work fun, which is
It
always the
does.
way to go.
Yeah, yeah, 100%, 100%.
Let's look at some more images here. These were
Oh
shot
man.
with the M10. Was this
M10.
also pretty recent?
No, this was in 2022. So the M10 was my first digital M camera. I came off a Leica CL and I grabbed the M10. I think it was like literally right before the trip. So there was a little bit of a learning curve for me. It was the only camera I brought on the trip. This is again, this is a personal trip. So I was just really shooting my heart out. Since it was personal, there was no deliverables that I needed to fulfill. I just was out there documenting my trip with my girlfriend at the time, who is now my fiance, and we were just roaming around Peru. And the picture on the left is the beautiful salt flats in the Sacred Valley, and the picture on the right, I believe, was in Huacachina. Uh, I feel like I'm getting that name wrong, but we basically rode those dune buggies, and I was on like the side of the dune buggy, and I had my M10 with me, and I was just zone focusing, well, pretty much just focusing on infinity, and just like shooting across the desert, and it was so much fun. I feel like that was a perfect use case for the M10, and I guess travel in general is really suited for the M cameras, and that's why I love bringing them around.
Definitely. I mean, I feel like, because of the mechanical nature of the lenses, you have such a small setup, at your
Yeah,
disposal. You have a full frame setup that's really, really compact. And of course, when we're traveling to these environments that, are dusty or are challenging, the M cameras are designed for those types of environments. So I always feel safe when I use those cameras in these environments that you're describing. Do you
yeah.
remember which lens you were using for these shots?
I believe it was a 28 2.8, and then I think the only other lens I brought on that trip was a 51 point no, 52.0. So, between the 2,
Classic.
I had very light carry, and then I was just filming video on my iPhone, and yeah, it was just nice to run and gun everything and not really have to worry about, like, what gear to bring because I pretty much had everything on me at all times. But definitely when
Yeah.
traveling, like 28 is, it's hard to beat. And I think at this time too, I was coming off a Q2, so I was very, very
Mm.
dialed to the 28 millimeter focal length.
It's a really classic focal length, like you said, just for traveling, you have the opportunity to do these kind of landscape shots, but also if you get a little bit closer, you can do the portraits. So I feel like it works really well for a lot of people. One of the reasons why Leica decided to go with that focal length for the Q system, but then you have that 50 as well. So if you want to focus on doing some more portraiture or get a little bit closer to the action, especially the f2, it's such a small lens, very pocketable. You can just pull that at any time. That's really great.
Yeah, 100%.
I believe this is also shot with the M10, and I wanted to ask you a little bit more about your process working with commercial work. When you have clients that approach you, do you have long conversations with them about what they're looking for? Do they just trust you with the process? I would love to hear your thoughts on how that works with your business.
Yeah, of course. So like I said in the beginning of this conversation, I live in such a unique space as a photographer where the clients almost always trust me to just do whatever I'm feeling at the moment. Maybe they'll provide a couple of shots here and there. Mostly right now, I'm focusing on a lot on travel and hospitality. So these bigger commercial clients will, I'll just stay at a property for a couple of days and just kind of document as I would as if I was like, just traveling naturally. Yeah. So and then
Gotcha.
my
And
process is, oh sorry, go ahead.
no, no, please go ahead.
And then my processes for it, it's uh I really just try to put myself in the moment. So um if I'm staying there on a property, I like to see what's around me, what restaurants are around, like how to live like a local basically, especially when I'm doing the hospitality stuff. And I start that off by, I usually bring two cameras with me, uh, an M and an SL. The SL is for more of the commercial shots, and the M is for me to just like really feel around the property, not raise any flags or anything. Me just walking around, snapping a few shots, and basically just like breaking the barrier of me like getting comfortable at that property because uh, if I'm traveling, once or twice a month in new places, it's like every set is a new set, and you're kind of uncomfortable in the first couple hours, just trying to acclimate yourself.
I totally get that. I think that's one of the reasons why people do scouting trips, just because
Yeah,
they want to have that feeling. They want to have the understanding of that space before they commit to photographing it. And I think that there's something to be said about, with your M walking around, your first impressions of that space are documented with the M. And then when you take out the SL, you're like, okay, I know what I felt, I know what I'm going for. Now I'm going to take out this other camera to really solidify that idea. Is that kind of how that works for you as well?
That's exactly how that works. And to also touch on it again, it's usually pretty wide. Like I'm usually starting pretty wide with the M, just
Mm.
seeing what pockets I can find, and then once I'm ready to dial in, I'll change over to the SL, or I'll still use the M and go into 50, and then just really punch into all the beautiful details that all the properties have to offer. So yeah.
Now, the image that we have here, does it? Oh, please go ahead. Yeah.
No, yeah, I was actually just gonna dive back into that image. That image was actually on a trip as well. It was on a hotel trip. Um, we were there for about 2 or 3 days with a bunch of creators, and they were kind enough to host a pasta making dinner for us, and that was my first time doing it. This time I had the M10 with me, and I was kind of it was a true testament to how rugged the M camera was because my hands had a bunch of dough on me. Like I was I think I was wearing gloves at the time, but I mean, even so, like there's just a lot of dust in the air. Um, and it was just a cool environment to be in. But yeah, this was more of just me documenting the space. This is like the entryway, and I saw this really nice detail, and I had to catch it. So
Yeah, that's stunning. We have actually images from your experience right here next, of this looks
yes,
like the pasta making time that you had.
yes.
And what I really appreciate about these shots is that, in the couple other shots that you were showcasing, there's not a lot of people. It's more about the space. It's more about like the different accessories that's on the table and things like that. But here it's all about that passion between this group of people. Is this something that you kind of navigate between the two of no people and then people, or do you try to incorporate maybe in your commercial work as well? People stop, passing by for context or for scale on different environments.
Typically, I try to in my line of work, I try to keep the people like more unrecognizable. I just feel like it helps tell a better general story. You can't really dial in on a person's emotions or anything like that. You really just want to focus in on what they're doing, where they are, how they're interacting with their space, and also most of the shots too are just hands in frame or no people at all. So I feel like it's a little bit easier for me to work with that. Um, and I do enjoy it, and especially for this pasta making class, everyone was doing something different, like, some people were in different
Mm.
processes of the pasta making. It was just so cool to watch and document as I was also going through the process. And I think specifically for this set, I went with black and white just because I wanted to be able to focus in on a lot of the textures happening, the textures, the equipment, the intricate movements. I just thought it was really cool to,
Yeah.
view that in that monochrome.
the the geometry of the hands doing, like you said, all sorts of different things, even a hand capturing a moment with the phone. Specifically, I love that section where the pasta's coming out and the hand is guiding the pasta. You can clearly see the motion. That's really beautiful.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you.
And here is some images on the left-hand side shot with the SL2S, and then on the right-hand side with the M11-P. Wanted to ask you your thoughts. You said that you were navigating between shooting with the M and the SL for your work. What are some of the differences? Like, why would you pick up the SL2S, or why would you pick up the M for certain shots? Is it based on the environment that you're in, or is it for a specific type of output? Love to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah, it is actually for a specific type of output. For the SL2S, I try to carry both of them with me at all times, when it's permitting. But for the SL2S, I use that to shoot whenever I know exactly what I want to shoot, whenever I have a moment in mind that I want to frame up, or like a specific detail I want to highlight, or a part of a story I'm telling. That's when I'll use the SL system, just because you can dial in so much. You know exactly what you're taking, and I really love that, as a workhorse camera for me. And then the reason why I also bring an M with me, is for the moments that you're walking by and you see something quick and you're not sure if you're not sure of what it is, but you're kind of abstract. I feel like like making it abstractly, just because there's no digital feedback. in the rangefinder, or there's very minimal digital feedback, and you kind of just have your frame lines. You have your frame lines. You're capturing what's in front of you, um, and it's just easier to tell that story when there's less.
Fully understand. Yeah, you keep your focus, especially for something like this where there's a lot of things you might need to compose into the frame, whether it be walls or windows or accessories or the ocean in the background. Less is more in these types of situations for sure.
Exactly, exactly. And in this particular photo on the left, it's like I saw the showers and I was like, "Oh, that's really something nice." Lined it up in my rangefinder, and I feel like I'm always guessing when it comes to the frame lines. I'm just like, oh, like whatever I get in there, I'll get it, and then I'll see it later in the crop because I'm not really checking until I get back. So
We have some questions from the chat already. One of the questions is, would love to hear how you got started in this line of work.
in hospitality, well, in just photography in general, or
In hospitality, I think that's a good topic for us to get into.
hospitality, yeah, it was actually right after COVID. All the hotels were opening back up, and I felt like there was a little lane for myself. I actually started in fashion, uh,
Mm,
8, 9 years ago. It's been a while, and I did that for 4 to 5 years. I worked my way up into a luxury e-commerce studio, and that's how I learned a lot of my lighting and more traditional photography. And then after that, I decided to branch out and try something new. I got into hospitality, like I said, because of all the hotels opening back up, and I really saw an opportunity to carve a lane for myself. And I had a little bit of there was a lot of opportunity for me to shoot hotels with fashion, just because they're beautifully curated spaces and they make for nice backdrops for fashion shoots. So I had a little bit of a backlog portfolio for that stuff, and I put that stuff forward, started pitching brands, and now I'm here like 3 or 4 years later, and I'm loving it because after the pandemic, all I wanted to do was travel. I didn't really care about
yeah.
fashion anymore, and I think it's a very common theme for a lot of people. Everyone just wanted to keep traveling and exploring the world, and that's exactly what I want to continue focusing on. And I'm glad that I'm able to do that with my work. I just have to I can tailor my work to my life and my life to my work. And like I said, I blur the lines, and it's been very fruitful for me. So
That's awesome. We'd love for you to share a little bit more about, this type of photography. I feel like a lot of people are not really familiar with hospitality photography. What are some of the challenges you may encounter in this type of field that people may not think about?
oh yeah, 100%. I think it's like balancing working with a new environment every single time. Back
Mm,
when I was working in fashion, you kind of understood where you were working. It was most of the time in the studio, so it was very easy to plan your shots out, look at a mood board, and figure things out. But in hospitality, I think the biggest challenge for me is trying to acclimate myself, get comfortable, and then also live like a local at the same time, while keeping it as organic as possible. And sometimes, there's a lot more factors into play. There's weather, there's how you're
mm,
feeling, there's the travel, and also like sometimes the stays are too short. Like if it's local, if it's in New York, I'll have a short amount of time, or if I'm abroad, time constraints are different. So you never really know what you're going to get. It's a very mixed bag in hospitality, but I try to stay true to my systems and, capture what feels right to me. I feel like that's always the best way to approach my line of work.
And do you work with your clients as far as maybe are they asking for a shot list, or are they asking for, oh, we want you to focus on this part of the new hotel that was just remodeled, for example? How does those conversations happen? Or is it you kind of give them a packet and say, this is the type of photography I can provide you and I can give you 20 shots, for example? How does that work with the client?
It really, for the most part, it's a lot of hotels newly renovating. So I'll be
Mm,
put in a situation where they have redone their lobby or redone some rooms, or like updated their F&B program, and I'll be basically put in a situation where I just need to be able to highlight that in a very tasteful manner. A lot of my clients don't really they don't mind how I shoot it. Meaning like film or digital, they just want me to capture it in the way that I would naturally capture it, which is definitely a blessing because I don't have to try to be something I'm not or try to force a certain situation. It's whatever I'm feeling at the moment, is what I'll try my best to push forward. And obviously there's shot lists here and there, just to kind of guide me. Um, but I think the best part about my job is that the clients trust me to
Mm,
capture as I would. Um, and these two systems really allow me to balance that out and make that happen the best way I can.
that's awesome. I have another question from the chat regarding your travels. What issues have you encountered with customs or border? Taking, your Leica gear to different locations. How do you pack for that? How do you work through these systems when you're traveling?
Yeah, it's tough. It's tough, especially with film. There's always that paranoia of will
Sure.
they put it through the X-ray, will they not? It really just depends on how each country is feeling at the moment. I like to always travel with at least a couple rolls of film, and yeah, I always try to travel with a couple rolls of film, but it always still makes me nervous. And I still have digital as backup. I try to shoot both hand in hand at the same time, just in case. Because I don't know, I've heard plenty of horror stories, and sometimes I'm traveling for client work, and you always want to have a little bit of backup. But whenever I'm abroad too, it's most likely a personal trip, so there's not too much
Hmm.
there's not too much pressure out the gate, which is nice.
Yeah. Absolutely. And a lot of times, they'll you can ask them. You can say, "Hey, could you hand check this?" Or, a lot of times if the ISO is not very high, if it goes through the X-ray machine, it should be fine. But it is your images, and if something happens, there's nothing much you can do about it.
Much,
But
yeah.
yeah, I think that's the challenge of shooting film. There's many challenges, and that's definitely one of them.
The challenge and also a beautiful part of it too, because with that pressure, you try not to take it too seriously. I feel like,
Mm,
especially when I'm shooting film, like it's a mixed bag. You never really know what you can expect. You can obviously sharpen your tool set, sharpen your skill set, and do your best to make sure the shots come out as you want them. But for me, film is like where I play. I
mm.
try to separate that from my work. A little bit, some clients ask for film specifically, but most of the time I try to just keep that for me.
I think that's a really good transition, Mark, because we're going to start looking at your film shots now.
Amazing.
And we had a conversation just before we got started about the Leica M3 and
Yeah.
how this camera really is one of your favorite cameras. Love to hear your thoughts on the M3 and why is it your favorite camera?
This is, oh my goodness, I have so many emotions tied to the M3. It is, first off, it's a beautiful camera, stunning. I got this black repainted M3 maybe like a year and a half ago or 2 years ago. When I was trying to decide on a film M, I just tried to lean into what I felt was right. And at the time, I was shooting a lot of 50 millimeters. So that really guided my decision here. And because, like I said, for the most part, I double carry an SL2S and an M of some sort. Leaving myself to a bunch of limitations, like you be only being able to use a 50 field of view, 50 focal length
Mm,
or higher.
sure.
Um,
Yeah.
it kind of just like kept the 50 glued on, and then I can just play with the SL2S as I would. But I love this camera a bunch. It's my baby. I don't know what else to say. It's just yeah, I have a deep
And
emotion to
as a 50 lover myself, I mean, this is the camera for 50
it.
millimeter
Yeah.
shooters. I mean, the viewfinder is absolutely stunning for that kind of work.
Yes.
But I think also there's something about this as being the first M from Leica. I mean, we are celebrating this year the 70th anniversary of the Leica M.
Yeah.
The M3 came out in 1954. It's so cool to see people using that camera that was designed 70 years ago.
Yeah.
I agree with you. The mechanical nature of it, the feeling in the hand, there's really nothing like it.
Yeah.
So really happy to hear that.
Yeah. 100%. And then I think there was also one thing I want to say about the M camera, about the M3 specifically. Oh, just like the fact that there's no meter in it. It's just so it like I love not having to worry about any batteries or anything. Like this is just a camera I can pick up and go as long as there's film in it, as long as I remember. That still happens. I still forget it sometimes. But if there's only one thing that I need to remember and it's just putting film in there and making sure it's loaded, that's perfect for me as a everyday carry. So I do love that.
I I love that as well. The fact that you can kind of pick it up whenever you want to take some pictures. You know, living in the digital world where you have to check if there's an SD card, you have to check if there's a battery. That kind
Yes.
of goes away as long as you know there's a thing, there's some film in there. You have to check how many shots you have left, but other than that, it's ready to rock. And there's something really freeing about that, which I personally enjoy.
Exactly, exactly. And since I'm also shooting for work, being able to just like take this super slow, be at my own pace with it, I love it. I love it so much. It's always gonna be with me.
And what kind of film do you like to use? We got some more shots coming up here.
I love to use mainly 400 speed film. So whether it's Ultramax, Portra 400, Cinestill, I like to explore. I'm not really married to a specific film stock, but I try to stay at 400 and rate it at 200. But these specific shots, I went on a limb and shot Ektar 100. Ektar
Hmm.
100 Grease is, I feel like, not really the first thing you gravitate towards because of all the deep blues, but the reds were really brought out in the undertones, and these are some of my best shots that I've ever captured, ever. So I really love these, and these were with the MA. So this was before I even had the M3. I
Hmm.
had the MA. I was just trying to figure out what focal length I wanted to use, and it was mainly 50 here. So that's why I kind of gravitated back towards the M3. But this was definitely fun to play with. This was again a personal trip to Greece. This is specifically in Santorini. Um, I think the my favorite thing about these shots is they're quiet. Usually Santorini is a very popular hotspot for travelers. And it definitely was, especially during the day. But I made it a point every single morning to wake up at sunrise. A little crazy on vacation, on a personal trip too, but I really wanted to make some beautiful work out there. And I feel like the best way for me to do that was to just wake up bright and early, have my camera, and just, mess around, walk around the the alleyways of Santorini.
I feel like you're speaking like a true photographer here. It doesn't matter if it's for commercial work or for personal. If the light's good, you got to get up.
If
That's
the
how it
light's good,
is.
yeah, 100%, 100%. Always chasing that light. And I love that, like, even though I'm doing this as a professional, like my love for shooting personally, like it hasn't changed at all. If anything, it's like
Mm,
amplified. And it makes me like every commercial job I do, I'm like, okay, I need to do one commercial job and then one personal work. Like I that's how I try to balance it, just to have like a
hmm.
really balanced portfolio because I feel that if I try to do too much in commercially, I lose my vision. I lose my vision, I lose my touch, and I lose the very thing that people hire me for, which is my creative freedom and my creative vision. So
I totally understand what you're saying. I think it's very important to have that balance. And you know, if for you these types of images where you wake up at sunrise and you capture something absolutely incredible, keeps you inspired, keeps you going, that is what you need for to keep you going with the commercial work as well. It's for some people it's taking a break and reading a book, and for others it's just more photography. So I think that's great.
yeah, all my hobbies and work in one. Very streamlined.
Indeed. No, I love this series right here because it's in the same spot.
Yes.
We have this. I'm a cat person as well, so I love any shot with cats in it. But is this the same lens, or did you switch lenses to achieve that closer shot when you got to the right hand side there?
No, this is all the same lens. All the same lens. I
Hmm.
believe. I believe it was 50. I was balancing between 35 and 50 on that trip, but I think naturally, I was gravitating a lot towards 50. I took a lot of steps back to take that first shot. I think I actually took the shot on the right first. I saw the
Hmm.
uh, cat napping, and there's so many cats in Greece. It was awesome. I have so many photos of them, mostly on digital because I was like, I can't have too many photos of cats on film, or I'm gonna miss a lot. So I saved that for the digital. But I did find this one cat napping. It was a super beautiful moment. I wanted to layer it with the red flowers that you can kind of see on the left coming in.
Yep.
Um, and then I was walking up the stairs and I turned around and I saw a different perspective. I saw a bunch of different colors, the blues on the left, balanced with the blues on the right of the sea. And then obviously, when you put these two photos together, you really notice the cat in there. And I think that's a really cute detail.
Definitely. Absolutely. We have some more questions from the chat here. One of the questions is, at the beginning, how did you find and build your client base?
I think living near New York was a very helpful thing for networking. Um,
Mm,
that's how I built most of my client base. Just being at coffee shops, meeting people, knowing people, also people in the fashion industry, passing my work around, and people always. I think people in other industries too. Like a lot of people are always looking for something different. So they'll hop into the hospitality industry or vice versa, or people are always moving around. So I think it's just good to be in touch with a good network, whether it's photographers, whether it's directors. Um, I think it's always just good to keep a strong network. And then obviously LinkedIn, Instagram. Instagram has played such a big role in my career as well, actually. Just being able to connect with photographers, directors, like it feels like we're all on the same playing field on Instagram. There's not really any hierarchies, which is really nice. Like, you see a good photo, it's a good photo. But at the end of the day, like it's plain and simple. And I love Instagram for its networking and for inspiration too, because there's a
mm.
lot of history being passed around, a lot of projects being worked on, and it's just cool to see and be connected with the world in that way.
And you're continuously updating your portfolio, rather,
Yes.
from your personal work kind of being added into your commercial work. I think that showcasing a diversity of images that you can produce, and it really doesn't matter if it was shot on a commercial shoot or not, that you can do it. And I think for a lot of clients, it's important to kind of see what you've done in the past, and the more of that content that you've created in the past, or the more the photography that you've done in the past, opens up new doors, opens up new possibilities.
Yeah, 100%. And on that same note too, it being a portfolio, like I like that you get direct feedback from Instagram. People on Instagram, whether they really engage with your post, and obviously when they don't engage with the post, sometimes it's algorithm based. But for the most part, you get like a really good look at like if some work is resonating with others. Maybe you should make prints of that. If people are bringing it up in conversations, and people are hiring me for certain jobs based on certain photos, it's really nice to have that direct feedback from Instagram. So it's very cool.
Absolutely. Let's look at some more shots here. And one of the questions that I have here in the chat is, what lighting gear do you bring on your professional shoots? Do you shoot mostly natural light, or do you bring external lighting for your shots?
Very recently, I started bringing some external lighting just for, late evening dinner cocktail situations, or like if the lighting isn't the best, or if I'm arriving at a property super late. But for the most part, I love to shoot natural light. I feel like 95% of my work is natural light. I'm always chasing it. Like even on like personal trips, work trips, these photos in particular it was a work trip for a hospitality client based in Mexico. And yeah, I just up early and just like chasing the light all day until the sun goes down, and that's when I can kind of relax. But I love being able to play with the shadows here, like putting the
Mm.
cocktail right in the light and then exposing for the shadows just so you don't lose all the details. Film is very forgiving with all that stuff, so I thought this shot turned out phenomenally, and I even love. I didn't really plan this, but I'm noticing it now. The shadow from the chair is just framing up the cocktail so nicely. So
Yes, absolutely. And when you're going to work for a client, how many shots do you take? Is it a lot of shots so you have a lot of options when you're editing, or do you kind of be more precise and I'm going to take one shot, I'm going to perfect it and get that one shot out? How does that work for you?
So over the years, I've definitely tried to shoot a lot less, as everyone usually does, just because I don't want to have to cull through a lot of digital images. Maybe for like a 3-day trip, I'll end up with maybe like 800 shots on digital. I'll cull them
Hmm.
down to like maybe 20 to 50 favorites, and then I'll deliver to the client. I'll let them pick, and then on film, especially when I'm traveling abroad, I maybe only bring 2 rolls of film with me max.
Mm.
So I really have to nail the shots, and try to tell a story in those, what's it, 72 images with 2 rolls?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And
So
and how do you make that selection? I'm mostly talking about digital here, as far as, you let's say you have 800 shots and you want to bring it down to 20. What are you looking for when you're doing these edits? Is it specific requests from the hotel? Is it just, you think this is a good shot? How do you do that?
Most of the time, I just try to source. Oh, I'll try to figure out like what a good shot is to me, and to me, something that constitutes as a good shot. It has to be unique. It has to tell a story. It has to have texture, good lighting, good exposure, um, all of the things that make a good photo to me. But yeah, some just a unique perspective. I think that's really what it boils down to for me. Just because all these properties, there's so many travel photographers around the world. There's so many people going in and out of different places, and I just want to capture something that's unique to me and also could be unique to the client.
And when you're developing these film shots, do you work with a lab? Do you do this yourself?
I don't do this myself. I learned back in high school. I took like a photography class. I learned how to do black and white. That has since left me, and I have no idea how to do it if someone put me in a dark room. But now I'm just glad that there's a bunch of labs popping up everywhere that make it super convenient and easy to get your film developed without any hassle.
And I'm sure that over time you develop relationships with these labs as far as what kind of look you're going for, what kind of processing you're expecting from them. Do you have those conversations with them as saying, "Hey, I please, underexpose this, or please do this for this particular role, for example"?
That's a good question. No, surprisingly not. I've been dancing around and trying out different labs just to see how they take my work differently. So no, I like I'm still looking. I'm still looking for the right lab, and I don't think I'll ever find one. I just like exploring and finding different looks and different perspectives on my work, especially with film.
And when you receive the images back, whether it be in physical form or perhaps you have them scanned, do you do any kind of post processing in digital once you have those that film back?
Yeah, I typically try to receive my film back flat, just so I can add back a little bit of the colors that I feel were natural to that scenario. But I do try to overexpose as much as I can within the parameters that I set it to, just so I have enough data, to work with.
Absolutely, makes sense.
Mhm.
We got some more images right here. Love these flower shots that are upcoming. This shot here and the next two shots after that.
Yeah, that
Just the
flower shot
pop
was
of
very
color
personal.
is stunning. Please, yeah, tell me more.
Thank you. Yeah, no, so this was on a trip in the December of last year. Oh, actually, also back to the film thing. I only started shooting film maybe like 2 or 3 years ago. So that's
Hmm.
also why I'm so early on, trying to lock in on the lab. Like I'm still early on in my film career, and I'm just playing around with all of it now. So that's been really fun for me. And this shot in particular is very special to me because it was taken in Manila, in my dad's area of where he grew up. These weren't the exact cross streets of where he grew up, but I just thought it was a really nice corner surrounded by some beautiful flowers. We were getting some really good light, and I don't know, it just spoke to me. I felt like I had to do a little bit of photojournalism while I was out there at my dad's place because I don't know how much longer he'll have that space. So I wanted to make sure to document it the best I could.
Yeah, I think that is something that a lot of photographers do, where they're traveling and maybe they will photograph what they're traveling, but sometimes it's just nice to take a picture of where you are, what you're
Yep,
eating, kind of basic things like that. It doesn't have to be really artistic. It's more about cementing that moment. And of
exactly.
course, you can take more time to make it as beautiful as possible, but I do think that there is an importance of documenting these moments that we have. And this is, it feels like exactly what you're doing with these shots here.
Yes, yes, exactly. And like I said, with these M cameras, like I'm never taken out of the moment. I just see it in passing and I snap away, and that's how I move along with those cameras. And it's been such a joy to use. And I feel like it's crazy because I'm almost 10 years into my career and I've been holding a camera for like 15 years now. I'm still just getting better at this. Like I'm still perfecting my craft to this day, and it's just fun. It's fun to be able to use new tools and old tools. This is an old tool. This is from 1965. It's crazy.
Right. Yeah, I think that there's a lot of people that, that lived and grew up in the digital age and are now just discovering film,
Yes.
as if it was this new thing, and it's definitely, well, technology, but beautiful technology, and the experience of it is something really unique that it's really hard to replicate on the digital side of things. The process of not knowing what your shot will look like until in a later period of time for me is a fascinating concept in how you perceive photography. How do you think about your own work? For me, it's all about taking your time because you might have a select number of shots. If you have one roll, you literally have X amount of shots that you have, and you don't have an infinite amount of space, such as what you have with SD cards these days. And so, taking your time, processing the moment. What is the best version of this moment, whether it be up close like this shot right here or backing up 2 steps,
Mhm.
having those thoughts occur in the field has value.
Yes, 100%. And over the years too, I mean, in the earlier work that you showcased, this is definitely some of my more recent work. So it's nice that we're going in kind of chronological order. But you saw that I was shooting a lot of wide shots, and now I'm really just glued to 50. 50 is my bread and butter. I love working with it. When I'm on a professional shoot right now. I'm on a commercial shoot, and I actually only use 50 throughout the whole job. And it's
Mm.
great. That's kind of just how my eye sees now.
Which 50 are you using these days?
I just picked up the new close focus 2023 Summilux, and it
Nice.
it's a blast, especially for commercial work because I can really get up close and punch in on those details. It's like a Swiss Army knife of a lens for me, and it gets the job done whether it's on my SL2S or on my favorite M3. So I think it's a blast, and it's been only like 4 months, but it's gonna last me a lifetime. So I'm really excited to continue using this and breaking it in even more.
I'm so happy for you. That lens is absolutely stunning. It's one of my favorites as well. Versatility it's not something you think about when you talk about a prime lens, but
Mhm.
yes, that lens is definitely versatile. Totally agree.
Yes, 100%.
Some more images of flowers. Love the stunning work on the right-hand side here with just the geometrical lines coming out of the frame.
Yeah.
Um, when you're traveling, do you feel yourself more connected as a first glance to the geometry of the scene or perhaps the colors? What grabs you first when you're walking in a new environment?
I think colors. Colors definitely grab me first, especially as you see here, all the pink flowers. And even backtracking to the beginning of our conversation, like I started in photography taking pictures of flowers, super close up, like all the different colors of the flowers. And it's always fun for me when I get back a roll of film and it's like mostly flowers. I don't I always develop my film maybe like 2 or 3 months at a time, so I never
Mhm.
remember what's on it. And when I get back all these flowers, it just reminds me of my childhood starting up photography. So colors definitely play a big role of like what I frame up. Um,
Mhm.
Definitely. And the
That's
colors on
awesome.
this new 50 are so rich. Before this, I think on that trip, in these photos right now, I was using a 50 Summicron V3 from like
Mhm.
1975. The color rendition was completely different, but it was fun. It was fun to use. So being able to see the contrast between my older lens and my upgraded lens, it's a blast. It's a blast to be able to like notice and understand these characteristics between the different glasses.
When we have conversations with people interested in the M system, a lot of people are surprised that Leica hasn't changed the lens mount since the M3, which allows you the possibility to try out all the different kind of optical designs through the decades. And there's definitely uh, ways of doing things back in the day as far as, okay, let's focus on, this part of the lens, let's focus on distortion, let's focus on color. And so depending on what your work requires or what you want to do personally, having a large selection of just the same focal length, you're just talking right here about shooting 250 millimeter lenses, um, does provide different outputs. And
Yeah,
that can be really exciting depending on what you're trying to create. So that's great.
yeah, 100%. I like I said, I try to limit as much as I carry on these trips, but sometimes it's as simple as me bringing two different 50 millimeters and just playing off of the strengths and weaknesses of each lens. But this newer one it's been a treat. It's been such a treat. It's so clinical to me. And then if I want a nice look to it, I'll throw it on the M3 shoot film, and it feels like a perfect marriage, like old and new glass. So it's really cool.
It feels good in the hand too. I love the
Oh yeah.
throw of that lens. It's so
Yep.
beautiful.
Yep.
I love the shot on the left of you. Who photographed this? Who was the
So
photographer?
my brother was actually the photographer. Like I said, I was on a family trip. This is my dad's home in Manila. Um, I just thought it was a really cool scene, and I wanted to grab a portrait. I think I was on like shot 35. I was near the end of my roll. So I was like, let me just get something that's super unique. And I never really step in front of the camera. So passing the M camera to my brother, I just tried to lock focus as much as I can. I think it's a little bit soft because maybe he stepped back a little bit, but I think that adds all the character to it. It's such a cool spot. And I don't know, it was nice to just document me in my dad's childhood home. So very, very cool.
I love that shot. That's so stunning. We have some more questions from the chat here regarding our conversation with lenses. The question is, how do you define what lenses to use? Have you tried them all and settled in on one you like? And the other question to follow up with that, which is, what lenses do you use specifically for architecture photography? I think that you mentioned using the 20mm a wide angle lens, but the question of how do you choose, I think is definitely interesting.
How do I choose which focal length or which lens? Is that what it was? What's the question exactly?
Yeah, which lens? So, talking about different renditions of the 50mm lens, for example, how do you make that decision of, okay, we're going to go with this version for these types of shots?
So actually, it's a lot simpler for me than people might think. I try to use my glass or whatever equipment I have in front of me as long as I can, and try to just wear it down to the ground, and then I'll change over to something new. So for the longest time, I was shooting on that 50mm Summicron V3. I think that was like 2 or 3 years ago when I first got into the M system, and then now I just have this close focus 50. So it's really easy for me to decide. I try to make it as simple as possible. Now it's just an autofocus lens and a manual lens. Like that's as far as the decision goes with deciding which glass to use. I try to keep it very simple. Try to keep it very simple, and just mess around in the edit a little bit if I need to. It just helps me pack lighter, pack more efficiently, especially if I'm on the go as often as I am.
Makes sense. Absolutely. We're going to end our conversation with this shot right here, which I absolutely adore. And I wanted to ask you, we talked a lot about your photography, and I know that you're also an art director.
Yes.
How do these two things work together for you? Are you continuously inspired by your photography? Do you feel like art directing is a different part of you? How does that work for you?
They're both very similar to me. I think one guides the other. Art direction being more conceptual, guides my photography. So I definitely focus on that the most, and I let that guide my work. I get inspired by magazines, movies, music, a little bit of everything. I know that everybody has different interests, and a lot of people look to photo books, but I like to expand my horizons and look at everything as inspiration. Whether I'm taking a walk in the park, or like at a museum, or watching a movie. Um, I think so. Yeah, art direction guides my photography, and they play well hand in hand together.
Definitely both visual mediums. I feel like what you just said, you're inspired by movies and other photography. It helps to know what's going on around the world. It helps to find out how other people are thinking about these visual challenges. Photography is all about solving those visual challenges, composing elements together into one frame. So I feel like they
Yeah.
definitely go hand in hand.
Yeah, and exactly. And since my lines are very blurred between my personal and professional work, like a lot of the time, like I said, the client will trust my vision and want me to do it the way that I want to do it. So it'll very loosely be me art directing the whole shoot and shooting the whole shoot. Like it puts the ball in my court, and lets my creativity flow. So that's what I love about my line of work right now and where I'm at in my career.
I have a couple more questions for you from the chat. Question from Eric. What's your dream setup? One body, one lens. What would you choose?
One body, one lens. I wanna say I wanna say it's the M3, and I think I have it. I think I have it right here. I think I have
I
it in
was
front of
going to
me.
say.
I think it's gonna last me a lifetime. Um, but if I were to get another digital camera, it'd probably be an M11P, but I think I'm good here. I think I'm good at the M3. M3 and
Classic.
50 2023 Simulux.
And then another question from Alexander, do you think it's still possible to attract the attention of potential future clients using Instagram, even though you may not have a big following?
Yeah, I think so, 100%. It's definitely a lot more challenging. I started Instagram maybe in like 2012, 2013, just by nature of me being a photographer, being interested in images so early on. Now the Instagram world is honestly very, very different from when I started, and it's more video focused. But I think that there's ways to make it tasteful, ways to get your name and work out there. You just have to trust your gut and create what you want to create at the end of the day. And I think in doing that, your work will stand out on its own, or will hopefully stand out on its own by, just focusing on yourself.
I love that. Well, Mark, I want to thank you for your time and for sharing your photography with us. We have a couple of different Academy workshops coming up that I would like to share with the audience. First one is the different product workshops that we have. This is both online and in person. If you want to learn more about the camera that you have in your hands, whether it be an M camera, a Q, or SL, these are great ways to get started with the system. You can use the QR code displayed here to log on to the Academy website and to see what is available. Perhaps there's one near you. We also have workshops both on the East Coast with, in this case here, a food photography workshop. This is a great way for you to explore different types of photography. If you're unaware of how food photography works, you'll be guided by a professional photographer on setting up these kinds of shots. We have workshops in the middle of the country in Texas as well, here focusing on rodeo. And finally, we also have workshops on the West Coast. Here's an example of one in LA focusing on portraiture. And again, you can find out more by going to the QR codes and checking out the descriptions on the website. If you want to learn more about what Mark does and see more of his work, here are his channels. We have his Instagram and his website. Mark, what is next for you? What are you excited about?
I'm excited to just continue exploring. My job is very much on the road, and I never really know what lies ahead of me. But I think that's the fun part. Just as long as I focus on, you know, carrying the right cameras with me and documenting things the way that I feel is true to myself, I'm happy to go anywhere in the world and continue exploring. So,
That's amazing.
thank you.
Well, thank you so much for your time, Mark, again, and looking forward to seeing what you create next.
Thank you so much, Nathan. I appreciate it.
Thanks, folks. We'll see you on the next one. Bye.
Bye, guys.